This is Robert Martellacci, the MindShare Learning Report, Canada's learning and technology e-magazine, and welcome to MindShare TV. And today, I'm thrilled to share that we're giving a sneak peek of what's coming. This Friday is Canada's AI Literacy Day, a national movement to reflect on how we prepare students and educators to navigate artificial intelligence responsibly. I'm pleased to welcome Matthew Johnson from MediaSmarts, a leading voice in digital and media literacy in Canada. Thank you for joining me,
Matthew. Oh, it's my pleasure, Robert.
We were just reflecting on being down at South by Southwest in Austin, presenting on a panel, and saying we hope to get back there one day, but we've enjoyed our collaboration. And this year is no exception, as we have our Canada's 18th. And time flies when you're having fun. It's our 17th EdTech Summit coming this fall. Our 18 Schools of the Future Student AI for Wellbeing challenge that we're launching this Friday as part of AI Literacy Day. And it's all about preparing teachers and giving them a sneak peek on. We have a special guest, and we'll talk about that with Dr. Steve Jordans. But you've got a lot going on. So talk to me about, before I get into that, I want to give a little bit more about your background as Director of Education at MediaSmarts, Canada's Centre for Digital and Media Literacy. This led the development of numerous national resources on digital media and now AI literacy, supporting educators, parents, and policymakers in fostering critical thinking, ethical technology use, and digital citizenship among young people. And you were an educator in the classroom.
Yeah, that's right. For about 10 years before I started at MediaSmarts, almost 20 years ago now. So I've seen a lot of changes in technology and particularly tech in education over that 30-year period.
And how was that pivot, and what inspired that pivot?
Well, it was a lot of different things, but one of the things that was a constant through my life has been my love of media and my interest in technology. I was actually one of that very first cohort in Ontario for whom media literacy was part of the official curriculum way back in the late 80s. And at the same time, an early adopter of computers and the internet, back in the day when modems made that terrible noise. And you had, 300 bits per second connection over the old phone line. And just seeing all of the changes throughout. And as I was in my teaching career, seeing how important media was to my students, both in terms of how it shaped their worldview, but also how it gave meaning to their lives in a lot of ways, seeing both the good and the bad of media, and particularly over that 10-year period where the internet and social media was really becoming mainstream. Most of that time I was teaching in Brockville, pretty small community in Ontario, and seeing a lot of the benefits and the drawbacks as the students there were suddenly being connected to the wider world. So It really has been, for me, an opportunity to really bring the most up-to-date digital media literacy approaches that we can to teachers across the country, and to work to make sure that these changes are being represented in curriculum as well.
Well said, and kudos to you for your leadership. And it's never been a more critical time, and history does repeat itself with new technologies. As I'm finishing up my book, Being Human in the Age of AI, I was reflecting on, the advent of the Gutenberg press, the Industrial Revolution, the digital revolution, and now we have the AI revolution, which it truly is game-changing, and the pace of change creates quite a gap between what teachers know about AI and what students are doing with AI. And hence, you've got some resources. So let's jump into AI Literacy Day, and I'm sharing my screen here. and it's this Friday, March 27th.
That's
Inspiration.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to do AI Literacy Day um, for a couple of reasons. Partly because we've just been getting so many requests from parents, from teachers, even from students, to address the issues that AI is bringing up, as well as the opportunities. Because just as we do with media and other forms of digital technology, it's really important to us that we take an empowering approach, that we're not denying and we're not ignoring some of the drawbacks, some of the risks that come with AI, but I think we also have to be clear-eyed about the advantages that it can give us. So another reason that we wanted to do this was it's really important to us to define AI literacy as a part of broader digital media literacy. That's something that we've been doing over the last 5 years or so, is bringing digital literacy and media literacy into a single discipline with a shared set of key concepts, a shared set of essential topic knowledge, a shared set of competencies, that classic KUD that teachers know so well, the things we expect students to know, to understand, to be able to do. We've developed a framework that integrates media and digital literacy in that way. And so by having this day, we are kind of planting a flag. We're saying that AI should be approached through that lens as part of digital media literacy, so that in the same way, we're working at helping young people understand it, access it, um, use it effectively and responsibly, and of course, to engage with it, to use it for good, but also to make sure that we are making a positive difference when we're using it.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you have resources for parents as well as teachers and students, because it takes a village, right, to raise a child, especially in
Hmm.
the 21st century, a digital village, if you will, with all going on. And that mobile phone use, we can talk about that because I think
Hmm.
we need to consider it. Rogers has a big campaign on right now around screen time. The stat that I saw is 5.2 hours on average a day youth spend on a screen.
Hmm.
Talk to me about the importance of balancing that. And that is on the high end. And I don't know that students will be in the honors category if they're spending 5.2 hours a day not doing homework or schoolwork in that time.
Yeah, although of course that stat, and I'm not familiar with it offhand, but a lot of the time when people are counting screen time, they're including time that's spent maybe doing homework or doing schoolwork. Um, it's really interesting because you use the word balance, and I think that's exactly the right approach that we need to take. There's a lot of evidence increasingly that is showing, first of all, that when it comes to time, there's what some people have called a Goldilocks zone, where you actually see better outcomes, better wellness, better mental health among the youth that are spending a moderate amount of time rather than the ones that are spending a whole lot, but also compared to the ones who are spending very little. And of course, that doesn't mean that if your kids aren't spending much screen time, you should be pushing them to have more. There's perfectly good reasons not to. But on a population wide level, it does seem like moderation is the key. We've similarly seen that more and more research is showing that it's not enough just to reduce screen time. That, for instance, we've seen recent data that reducing screen time doesn't necessarily lead to kids getting more sleep.
Hmm.
That kids who have less screen time don't necessarily spend more time outdoors and aren't necessarily more active. So, at the most, reducing screen time is part of the solution, but you also have to, at the same time, be making sure that you are encouraging good sleep habits in other ways, that you are providing opportunities for kids to get outside and be active, maybe doing it with them. And
Right.
so that's why it's important not to focus so much on screen time, because we kind of assume, oh, well, if we just reduce the screen time, these other things, the sleep, the
Yeah.
socialization, the exercise, these will come automatically. But the research is showing increasingly that they don't.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Guarantee it. So Canada's been a global leader in digital media literacy through organizations like MediaSmarts. How does AI literacy build on and differ from traditional digital literacy?
Well, it really is um, an extension of traditional digital media literacy, because a lot of those key concepts, some of them that go back to the 1980s, still really apply. So that basic concept that really goes back to, to Marshall McLuhan, the idea that media are constructions, that they don't accurately
Hmm.
reflect reality. Because of course, a chatbot, more than anything else, can feel real, and we have seen examples where people come to feel as though it is real. It behaves as though it's real. In the same way, the idea that media have commercial considerations, that the companies that are providing these tools and services to us, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're not doing it as a public service. They're doing it to make money. And one of the times when we have to be most cautious is when for-profit companies are doing something where they don't yet have a revenue model, um, because that's when they start looking very hard for ways to monetize what they're doing, and that's when often they end up cutting corners. And we saw that with social media, where in the sort of early days of social media, they were doing really egregious things in some cases when it came to privacy, to data collection, and some of that has been rolled back, but we're, I think, going to see that very much with AI. And of course, another aspect of digital literacy, that again kind of goes back to McLuhan, is the idea that the tools we use shape how we use them. And that, I think, is the one that is most relevant to AI, particularly because, unlike other technologies, how it works is so invisible to us. There is that metaphor that you hear about of the black box, that even the designers of AI don't necessarily know how it came to a particular conclusion, how it generated a particular output. It is almost completely opaque to us.
Right.
And so we have to think even more consciously, when we compare it to something like a search engine or
Right.
social media, where at least we have some idea of how the gears are turning, as it were. With AI, we need a whole other level of understanding. And so the data that shows that just understanding on a basic level how AI works, how it is trained,
Right.
how it generates outputs, those technical things have a huge impact on how critically people use AI.
Fascinating. And to that point, KPMG did a study that found 73% of students were using AI last year.
Hmm.
77% wanted to know how to use it ethically and responsibly.
Hmm.
So we created a micro credential course for middle to high school
Hmm.
students that we're releasing actually this Friday. So we want to
That's awesome.
add and to the equation and support through C21 Canada. And so when we talk about AI literacy, there are core concepts students need to understand today. Is it about the tools or something deeper? You were touching on some of that. And um, teachers aren't exactly in a position, and you've got some great resources yourselves
Hmm.
that you're providing. Um, but teachers, for the most part, some school districts have yet to provide guidance for school.
Hmm.
the province of Ontario hasn't really done that
Mhm.
much, from what I understand. It's a real conundrum. So talk to me about what you're doing for teachers.
So a lot of what we're doing for teachers is sort of making them aware of what the issues are and some of the strategies that they can use um, to address those issues. So again, a lot of it is just helping them to understand the technology better, and understand why these different issues get raised. Um, of course, teachers at different school boards or districts, teachers in different provinces and territories, they may or may not have guidance about how to address AI in the classroom, either for students' use or for their own use. So, we can't necessarily provide that because it's in some cases going to be overruled by where they're teaching, but we can give them general advice. We can give them tips on how to manage these things. And again, sort of philosophically, how to approach it. Because I think this is something that we're not going to be able to keep out of the classroom. Um, it's too widespread already, and it's also too easy to use. Um, and it's much harder to conceal, or much easier to conceal, rather, the use of it compared to something like a phone. Um, because it's going to be used often on a laptop, or it's going to be used outside of class. And so providing teachers with a good grounding of the technology, the implications of the technology, and some general principles for how we can address it can help if they're not getting guidance from their school or their school board or district or from their ministry. But even if they are, it can help to resolve a lot of the contradictions that we're hearing about. So we know, for instance, there are school boards where simultaneously students are being told they can't use AI in any way in their assignments. And at the same time, the school board has made an arrangement with some AI company to provide the tools to students. And it takes a certain amount of understanding to try to resolve those mixed signals that are going to teachers and to students as well.
Right. Interesting. So, uh, one of the big concerns uh, we hear is around misinformation, bias, and over
Hmm.
reliance on AI. How can educators help students develop critical thinking and healthy skepticism, not unlike your break the fake, right,
Hmm.
around AI tools? Because I find it challenging. How many social media posts I see, and you go to the comments because you think it's real, and it's like fake news, it's AI generated, like to the point, that tragic accident in
Hmm.
in New York with the Air Canada flight hitting a fire truck.
Hmm.
People were creating these accidents using AI to just get eyeballs.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's, to me, that's sickening, and that's not
absolutely.
what it's a
Yeah.
what. It's
And
not what it's about.
we've seen that with wars and disasters as well. Natural disasters, where as soon as something happens like that, people are making AI content, images and videos, and they're sharing it just to get clicks, just to get attention, just to get clout. In some cases, to get money, because on some social networks, you can get money for views. Um, and that is something that people have to be aware of, that a lot of the time people are making AI images of things that really happened, which is um, or is a more complicated form of disinformation than we've seen in the past.
Right.
It's not completely made up. It's not that they're saying that this didn't happen, or that they're saying that something happened that didn't really happen. So in the example you gave, of course, that really did happen, that tragic crash. But the images themselves are fake. And the other thing that we've seen, particularly around deepfakes, is that unfortunately, because of when the state the tools were in when they were launched, the AI image generator and video generator tools, people learned a lot of techniques for spotting deepfakes that quickly became obsolete. And not only did they become obsolete, they became misleading. So in the early days, it was very easy. You would look for extra fingers, you would look for weird garbled text, you'd look
Right.
for one eye that was not quite level with the other, that kind of thing. And so people are still looking for those because that was immediately the savvy thing to do. The problem is that today, first of all, the tools don't make those mistakes anymore. So
Right.
easy to be fooled if you're looking for those things,
Mhm.
because they're not making that kind of mistake. Even more so, though, it's led people to look for those surface clues that can exist in real
Right.
images and videos. So, sometimes just because of the way a photo was taken, text will be blurry, or sometimes, maybe someone's eye will really be a little bit larger
Right.
than the other. There's a surprisingly large number of people in the world who actually do have six fingers on one hand.
Right.
Um, so and we know from research into disinformation and misinformation that predates AI that if you're looking for reasons to believe that an image is fake, you will find them. No matter how
Right.
convincing it is, you will find some artifact, some flaw that will let you believe that it is fake. And so one of the things we're most concerned about is what's called the liar's dividend, where you can dismiss something that you don't want to believe is real by finding some reason to think that it is AI. And of
Right.
course, recently, what we're seeing is people using AI to do fact checking. Um, we see that a
Right.
lot on social media, like X,
Sure.
where the AI is built in, and you just have to send a post to it, and it'll reply. But of course, we know AIs, they can be a powerful tool for getting information,
Yeah.
but there's something that needs to be used very much in the way that we recommend using Wikipedia, which is also a very powerful tool, but you have to check the sources. You can't just look at the overview of a Wikipedia article and call it a day, in the same way that you can't look at an AI output and call it a day. You need to make sure that it's providing you with sources, and you need to double check that, first of all, those sources really exist and weren't hallucinated, and also take a few moments to make sure that it's representing them accurately, because I find even with the best tools, and certainly some are better than others and some are worse than others, but even with the best AI tools, even ones that don't routinely hallucinate sources will sometimes misrepresent them.
Well said. Well-being and AI use. A big theme this year is AI and student well-being, not just what students can do with AI, but how it impacts their focus, learning, and mental health. What should educators be thinking about when it comes to AI and digital well-being? We're launching this national contest focused on well-being, taking into account the sustainable development goals around health and well-being and education. Uh, we're giving them a sneak peek on Friday. It's formally launching on Tuesday at the Dell Education Summit, which you're welcome to attend if you like, in Toronto. But it's the state of well-being, and I'm going to the uh, mental health for education summit
Mhm.
next month in Calgary. We're a media partner. It is a crisis right now. I don't think we're getting better. I think it's getting worse. And the question I'm going to pose to you, and I've asked this to other leaders, is 30 years later, with all the technology that we've got at our fingertips, are kids better off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the data shows that they're not better off. The question is really why and what we can do about it. And I think there's no question that technology is a part of that. I think it's a complicated part. I think there are not easy answers. The data shows very strongly you can't necessarily draw, in most cases, a direct link between digital media and well-being, but I think there are complex relationships. So one of the things that we know is that a big mediator in the impact of digital media use on your well-being is whether or not you feel in control of it, that sense of agency. And that's why, the rhetoric of addiction, the framing of addiction, we find is not only unhelpful, it's actually harmful. Because when we talk about it in terms of addiction, or even when we start by the assumption that using digital technology or using social media is inherently bad for you, it's disempowering. It takes away that sense of agency. And it's one of the reasons why, you will hear kids cheerfully admit to being addicted to
Hmm.
social media or to their phones, because saying that you're addicted takes away the responsibility. It
Interesting.
takes away the
Good point.
possibility of change, because when you have that addiction framing, either you are addicted or you are abstaining. And of course, abstaining from all digital technology is not realistic. Um, so, what we really push for is talking about these things in terms of habits and pushing for the idea of balanced use. And then what is balanced is going to be different for different people. My own kids, they don't have phones, and that's because they haven't asked for them. It's not because I
How
said no. It's
and how
because, and
old are they?
they're 15 and 17. Um,
Wow.
but that's one of the reasons why we have to look at it in a broader context. And it's not just about what the digital technology is doing, but how it's interacting with other parts of our world. One of the reasons that my kids don't have phones, one of the reasons they've never asked for phones, is because they can walk everywhere. They walk to school. If they want to go see their friends, they walk to see them. We don't have to be constantly in contact about, when do I pick you up? Where are you going to be when? We live in a very walkable neighborhood, but I realize not everyone
Yeah.
has that luxury. That as a
That is a
society,
real
yeah,
benefit and convenience. Yeah, no,
and we have
incredible.
fewer and fewer spaces outside of school and the home for kids to spend time in. And particularly, we have very few spaces where they can have any degree of independence. But teenagers need to develop independence. They need to have time and space when they are away from us, their parents. And over the last 30 years, that has increasingly almost all been online. So it's not just the technology, though the technology, I cheerfully admit the technology in a lot of cases is designed to be habit forming, and we have to acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
And we have to account for that when we're trying to build better habits. But it's not just the technology. It is that, again, even when you take away the technology, even when you reduce that time, if those other opportunities aren't there, if we as parents aren't there to do things with younger kids, if there aren't third spaces or just even safe outdoor spaces for older kids to be independent in, then taking away the screen time, reducing the screen time isn't going
That's
to
a
have any benefit.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one of the things we do here at the Mindshare Workspace Innovation Center in Air Mills Town Center is we allow students to come and study free here because we want to
Hmm.
provide that third space. Not
Hmm.
everyone has
Yeah.
comfortable, classroom or study space at home or the libraries. There's two local high schools here, so the library's always overbooked, overfull.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're always happy to welcome students here. Uh, Connecting to schools of the
Hmm.
future. This coming Friday, we're super excited, and thank you for sharing our initiative as well.
Hmm.
It takes a village, right? It really truly takes a village, and as part of Canada's um 18 Schools of the Future Student AI for Wellbeing Challenge, alongside uh, responsible AI micro credential that we launched. And how do initiatives like this help move the literacy uh, from awareness to action to student ownership needle in your estimation?
Well, I think it's so much of what we need to do through events like yours, through things that we do at MediaSmarts, is just keeping AI literacy and digital media literacy more generally a part of the public conversation. That's why these events are so important, that people are aware that we don't have to just sort of be passive, that there are ways we can learn about it, and that we're not powerless. That if we don't like the way these tools operate, if we want to improve them, if we don't like how the companies that run them do business, if we don't like the effect that they're having on our kids, or if we see that there are benefits that our kids aren't getting, if we see that there are ways that these tools can be beneficial, then we can take advantage of them. But we need to have that basic literacy to be able to do that, and we need to have that conversation. You mentioned earlier how Canada has been seen as a world leader in media literacy, and that has been true. But at the same time, it's been more than a decade since the federal government really took a leadership role in promoting digital media literacy. There have been some great programs, particularly from Heritage Canada, but in terms of making it a national priority in the way that we used to, and in the way that countries like Finland have done, we just haven't seen the kind of action that we saw coming from the federal government in the 90s or the beginning of this century.
So thank you for that. So this Friday, you are putting the stake in the ground for launching Canada's first AI Literacy Day.
Mhm.
What's one action that you would encourage teachers, school leaders, policymakers to take right now?
I think probably what we need right now is to know more. I would say every one of those groups can take action to find out what young people are already doing. We have so little data in Canada about young people and technology. And without a baseline, without knowing what tools they're using, without knowing what they're using them for, without knowing their attitudes to them, it's very difficult for us to develop resources. It's very difficult for teachers to respond. And of course, it's tremendously difficult for policymakers to know how we should address AI, whether for the population in general or for youth in particular.
Matthew Johnson, thank you for your leadership and for helping shape the important national conversation. And to our viewers, we invite you to join us this Friday. I put the MediaSmarts web link on the post and in the chat. And our webinar is taking place at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we'll explore how students could lead responsibly in the age of AI. And teachers will be informed by the likes of Dr. Steve Jordans, who's an expert on well-being and learning and innovation. And while he embraces technology, he takes a cautionary approach, right? And it's all about balance. It's all about leveraging the tools so that you stay in control and that we don't subscribe to the notion of Marshall McLuhan's theory where we create the technology and then it shapes us. Not an easy feat, would you say, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, best of luck this Friday. Looking forward to connecting. Are you doing any live streaming events? Is the AI minister joining in? We're going to invite him to join us at 1 o'clock on Friday. We're hoping that Minister Solomon will join us.
Yeah, we are doing a couple of live events, but they're not going to be open. One is for a school board here in Ontario, and
Okay.
one is for teachers in New Brunswick.
With that, thank you again, Matthew Johnson, Director of Research at MediaSmarts. My name is Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare.learning to get your latest issue. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.